Well, you speak about pressure, and that is exactly where the Carlton Football Club find themselves at the moment. Saturday afternoon versus North Melbourne, and only to rewind back a few rounds, and they played North in Good Friday and did an absolute number on them, but the roles were reversed at the MCG in the early game on Fox Footy. Geordie, this is just a completely different outfit that we're seeing from Carlton at the moment, and this is a low that they haven't been at for a long time.
Well, it was stark, wasn't it? So I think with the ability to play some teams twice, you do get a really good yardstick on how far teams have come, and quite often the conversation over the last 6 to 8 weeks has been the improvement of North Melbourne. So that was for all to see, but it also brought about maybe the demise of this Carlton Football Club and how they haven't progressed through this season. And we just look at, you know, some of the numbers there. So this is good. So defensive 50 to inside 50 differential. So that is good. That game, that part of their game is in really good order. The one big thing is clear the one on the right-hand side in red, which they sat second in the AFL last year in that particular area.
Well, they were 9 weeks ago when they played North. They had a plus 25 inside 50 differential. That was plus 14 on the weekend. So it wasn't as if the field position or the supply was the issue. They couldn't defend it when North went in, and they couldn't score when they went in. And that's a fundamental part of the game that shifted in that 9-week period. A 93-point turnaround, 10 goals of which, 60 points of that were stoppage. So Carlton won 9 weeks ago by 5 goals, that stoppage contest as a score source, and North flipped the script on that.
If we think of Carlton as well, where their strength lies, it's in their midfield, but their identity is lost currently in there. They're down on clearances. They're not being Carlton, and that's sort of their one and what they've relied on, Leigh.
In the big picture, you think sometimes they play quick. When they play quick and get the overlap handball going, they can have their really good quarters. I don't know what happened in the last quarter because they had one of those. But then sometimes you just see them chipping the ball across the half-back line, and they might get it into their forward 50 eventually, but by that stage, most of the players are down there. So I don't know why sometimes they play quick. And they haven't got much leg speed, we know that. But so often they just don't seem to want to play quick.
I think this is alarm bells for Michael Voss. The fact that you think about Cripps, they've got Tom De Koning in there. So they should be an excellent clearance side, and it's been a weapon for him a long period of time now, but it's just not firing.
Well, it's like you look at Brisbane, you look at the depth in their midfield. So we always talk about the stars of McCluggage and Neil, but it goes sort of 6 to 8 deep. I think the issue with Carlton will always be is when their mids aren't firing, and they've been well beaten the last 6 weeks. So that part of their game has been hampered because the stars that you rely upon in that particular area of the ground, not only to get the ball, but to also apply pressure, and tackle pressure is one of those things. So this is on the weekend. North Melbourne were on the move. They were aggressive. They were first possession and trying to burst out of stoppage, and the missed tackles, the easy layers of defence that North Melbourne were able to get through, so they had a clear path to goal, became quite obvious as the game went on. And we can talk about the fourth quarter performance of Carlton. They nearly came back and stole the win, but this was all about, up until then, this was all about a brutal North Melbourne.
Bucks, you can see why Michael Voss said they were bullied.
Well, absolutely.
From this vision here, can't you?
So there's 2 areas. So to be able to put pressure on, there needs to be some short leg speed to be able to get your body into the position to lay the pressure. And then you need strength to be able to go and stick the tackles. And there was neither displayed there. Either there was strength but you couldn't get your legs across, or there was legs and you weren't strong enough to stick the tackle. And the modern football asks a fair bit of individuals. And if you're not up to it, it doesn't really matter who you play or when. If you're not maxing out, if you're not bringing all of that to the table, you get exposed, and that's exactly where Carlton were on the weekend.
Leigh, I want to ask you about this midfield from Carlton, and there's been a significant drop-off from the stars. Tom De Koning, Patrick Cripps, Adam Cerra and George Hewitt. This is their ranking, so where they sat in the previous 6 rounds. The last 6 rounds, I mean, the drop-off is stark. Patrick Cripps sits at 213 in the player rankings in the AFL. Like, that is glaringly obvious that, one, he is out of form and he's not the only one down there.
And Tom De Koning's going to be the highest paid player in the game next year.
Well, would you pay $1.7 million for him at St Kilda?
I mean, I've been cynical. Like, you watched that game on the weekend, you said he could be going to St Kilda on $1.7 million. He's a mile from that level, I would have thought. But Sam Walsh, of course, is not there. And at his best, he was the one who sort of had the legs to break into space. But I don't know whether the injuries have prevented him being able to do that. He's obviously injured at the moment, again. But they just don't seem to be able to break away. I mean, you saw the North Melbourne were a good example of the opposite. I mean, you had Davies Uniacke who could break into space. McKercher was running past, breaking into space. Like leg speed, they just look like a side that lacks leg speed. As basic as that.
Well, the other ones that I think run really well for Carlton when they're playing are Cottrell and Elijah Hollands. Like they're long runners that can get involved, but you can't play with players that you don't have available. So what you were talking about consistency in the way they play, and sometimes they're going fast and sometimes they're going sideways. They can't get consistent for 4 quarters, let alone to get a consistent method across the last 6 or 7 rounds that we've seen. So that must be the frustrating thing for a Carlton supporter, to look out and not know exactly what you're going to get quarter to quarter, let alone game to game.
I think we can, and you two have been in this position. Sometimes the game plan can be relatively easy to fix, and you try and hone in on the things that you think will then build out your game plan, you gain trust. I think the big issue right now with this Carlton Football Club is the trust off the field and the potential breakdown in relationships between coaching staff and players. Now, that is really hard to get back. That is then transferred onto the ground, where you get missed tackles because you don't trust the tackler. The players are getting played in certain positions and other players not getting exposed to that position. So I think this is a bigger issue for me, for the Carlton Football Club, is what is happening now off the field, as well as what is happening on the field.
So how does Michael Voss and Patrick Cripps and the leaders fix that? Because that's a big issue. They're at this point in the junction where players can splinter and go one way or the other. You can lean in or you can lean out. How do they go about that?
My belief right now is that is starting to happen. So it is an honest conversation. If they're talking to people, if players are talking to people outside the football club and they're not necessarily having those conversations inside the football club, that is a real issue. If these conversations that we're starting to hear aren't happening inside that football club, Michael Voss would need to address that. You need to call the leaders, in which 3 or 4 were playing on the weekend. Sam Walsh was the only leader that wasn't there. You need to call the leaders in and say, is this happening? Are these conversations happening outside this football club about certain players getting preferential treatment?
Well, you speak about that and spirit. It's become a little bit evident to see, and on Super Saturday, David King put it on the agenda that he saw zero fight when Tom de Koning was thrown into the fence by Tristan Cherry. And this is the footage here. Like, bullied is the word that has been used by their own coach, and this is being bullied. There is only Hollands, who is a slight wingman. He goes to Cherry. Cripps comes in, and that's Finn O'Sullivan that pushes Patrick Cripps away.
Well, it's fake support, really.
Are we making something up that's not there? You wouldn't really that hard to push.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know about that one, but I think, speaking on trust, trust is so important when you play. So these examples right now, this is communication, this is trust that the job gets done. Now, we watch just here to the right-hand side, there's handovers. McGovern hands over. You've got to understand that handover gets followed through. It doesn't. So now Fogarty gets drawn into that particular matchup. O'Sullivan pops up. Then this ball should be killed. At the end of the day, we're speaking about a ruckman who's 200 centimetres, not 100 kilos. That ball should be murdered. But right now, the play isn't done. You still need to finish the play. We see there Carlton players who are just talking. I don't know what about. Darling is on the goal line. If Darling had marked that ball, it nearly would have been the most embarrassing play, I think, of 2025, because of what was happening in and around Jack Darling.
Well, the media bus has been parked down at Icon Park today, and we've had John Ralph on the phones. Ralphie, can you give us the latest from the Carlton Football Club?
Hey, guys. It might be Geordie making the headlines there. Preferential treatment. That's a big call, Geordie. So the Hawks Mafia is coming from the top rope. So Lance Franklin today said it's time to sack Michael Voss ASAP. That won't happen. The Carlton hierarchy absolutely determined not to try and sabotage a season that seems to be going nowhere, but has this club only 2 wins outside the 8 right now. So anyone who knows President Rob Priestley or the new Chief executive in Graham Wright knows that they will make calm, methodical calls. So Voss won't be sacked mid-season, but I think he realises that potentially this is getting to a really perilous stage. He remarked to some friends before the West Coast game, look, if we lose this one, this might be the beginning of the end. So many of the players absolutely love Michael Voss. They would go to war for him, and yet Paddy Cripps would deny it, but there's a feeling amongst players of a lack of connectedness when the going gets tough. Some of the players feel like there's potentially hierarchies, whether that's the alpha males on the big bucks or whatever that might be. There's a lack of fun, the need to manufacture responses with Kerno Farm getaways. It's not organic, and so some of the decisions are now time sensitive. Football boss Brad Lloyd knows he will be scrutinised himself by Wright, but come August 1, the AFL Coaches Association will want notice if assistant coaches are to be moved on. So the key assistants are Tim Clark, Aaron Hamill, Ash Hansen, all contracted but subject to 3 or 6 month payout clauses. As someone at Carlton said today, change is coming. It's just how much and how quickly. The easiest decision, which will happen, is to change up elements of that coaching panel, but at some stage Graham Wright or someone close to him would also make the call to, you would imagine, someone like John Longmire. Are you interested in coaching this club? Because you can't make a decision on Michael Voss until you know what else is out there. Now, a lovely touch from Carlton tonight in a really tough weekend. It's reached out to the young fella who was seen in tears in the coverage, who was pretty distraught about the way the game was unfolding there. It's not easy to be a Carlton fan right now. The Blues fans need to band together, and so hopefully the Blues can do it for him. They're really thrilled with the way that he's supporting that football club and get a victory on Thursday night football on Fox Footy against Port Adelaide.
Thanks, Ralphie. Well, it's not easy being a Carlton supporter. It's also not easy being their coach. Leigh, have you reached out to Michael Voss in regards to the situation that he finds himself in at the moment?
No, I haven't spoken to Vossy for a couple of months. I mean, we're not sort of like that regular. But, I mean, he would have plenty of people that he can consult with if he chooses to. But I thought really the interesting about Carlton, you've worked under Graham Wright as the administrator. Tell us about Graham Wright as the administrator and whether you're an agent for change or you're an agent for perseverance. Where do you see Wright in the space?
What I would say about that is I think Brian Cook is someone who would stay the course and allow things to play out.
Yep.
And it probably delays making changes and believes in putting people in place. Righty, I haven't seen in the CEO's role, and that's the thing that we've all forgotten about, haven't we?
He'll be very key in footy decisions.
Well,
surely
he will in the early stages. There's no doubt, but I think good clubs don't get their CEOs too involved in footy. Like they have really good football managers who are in charge of the football department. So Brad Lloyd is in that role at the moment, and that's probably the conversation between Graham Wright, Brian Cook and Brad Lloyd are the important ones, and what to do going forward.